A warm welcome to another edition of Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Reactions have been pouring in since the Trump administration ordered and executed the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in an operation that took weeks of military reconnaissance, monitoring, and complicity with agents on the ground in Venezuela. This happened in the early hours of Saturday. Venezuelans awakened to the sound of airstrikes across the capital city, Caracas. According to the U.S. president, they had many helicopters, many planes, and many people involved in the fight, and not one piece of military equipment was lost, and no service member was killed. Now that Maduro is gone, President Trump says the U.S. will run Venezuela until a transitional government is in place.
We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. And it has to be judicious because that's what we're all about. We want peace, liberty, and justice for the great people of Venezuela, and that includes many from Venezuela that are now living in the United States and want to go back to their country. It's their homeland.
Back in Venezuela, Vice President Delcy Rodriguez demanded the immediate release of President Maduro. She announced that Washington's true objective is the seizure of Venezuela's mineral and natural resources, and that the world and international community must know that this is the case. Caracas has declared a national emergency, condemned extremely serious military aggression, and says the U.S. is trying to seize Venezuela's strategic resources, particularly its oil and minerals.
Que estaba en curso una agresión.
Joining me now is former Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and former Nigerian Consul General to the United States, Ambassador Joe Keshi, who joins me here in the studio. Ambassador, welcome.
Thank you, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. We'll be joined virtually by Ibrahim Anoda. He is a doctoral candidate of history at the University of California, from where he joins us. Ibrahim, Happy New Year to you, and thank you for joining us on the program.
Happy New Year, it's my pleasure.
We all know what has happened in Venezuela. Ambassador, I'm going to begin with you. And I think the first question that runs through, any international affairs analyst or any historian or an ambassador like yourself is the laws that the U.S. President Donald Trump may have broken. And there are quite a number of international laws, aren't there?
Absolutely. He has broken the international law. He has broken the domestic law. He has broken the law granting immunity to heads of state. So there is virtually no law you can think of connected with, in connection with international practice that the President of the United States has not broken, including domestic law, which ensures that the right to declare war is not solely with the president, but also with the Congress. And I think a congressman has just issued a very blistering statement about the president's action and calling Americans to realize that this is a threat even to the nation itself. And he gave all possible consequences or outcomes of the action of the president. So all the laws you can find in the book with international relations have simply been broken.
Ibrahim, President Trump has hardly ever asked Congress to approve any of his decisions. In fact, he's been ruling by executive order. This is one of them. How do the American people feel about what has happened in Venezuela?
So this event is one of those events where it creates deep division in the country. But to give further context to what the ambassador recently said, of course, it's a violation of international law and a violation of the legal settings in the U.S. But here's the deal. This is not the first time that we've seen this happen. in 1989, we saw the former leader of Panama brought into the US, actually tried and jailed in Miami. And we saw the same thing almost last year when the former president of Honduras, Juan Hernandez, was also jailed in the US, tried for the same, pretty much the same thing, drug trafficking, racketeering, funding gangs, and whatnot. So the president will point to that or to these presidents as examples of how America has in the past done the same and justify that. Now, of course, we've been seeing supporters of Donald Trump point to Article 2 of the US Constitution that pretty much declared the president as the commander in chief of the armed forces. However, the other side of the debate is Congress. Congress will say Article 1 of the US Constitution vests the power to declare war in Congress. But we've seen in the press conference yesterday when Pete Hegseth, the defense war, the minister of war, pretty much said this is a police work in Venezuela. There is no war going on. We pretty much went into Caracas to arrest two indicted individuals, Maduro and his wife, and it was pretty much an arrest. But we pretty much saw what transpired. That was not an arrest. American boots were on ground. American know-how and military equipment were on ground. So it's going to be an interesting debate to see how this contestation transpire, not only in Congress, but also in the White House for the next couple of weeks about the legality of this whole action.
Promise when he was campaigning that, there will be no more wars, didn't he? And here he is intervening in countries where it is likely there is going to be a war. I mean, Venezuela has declared a state of national emergency already. And the point person that the US government is hoping would be the leader of a transitional government, the Vice President, Delcy Gonzalez, I believe is her name, has already, spoken out against what has happened and condemned the action on Venezuelan soil.
No, she had done two things. Publicly, she has condemned the action. Privately, she has spoken to the Secretary of State of the United States and has given the assurance that they are prepared to work with the United States. And that in itself raises a number of, questions that should be worrisome, not just to dictators but to leaders all over the world, about the people around them. How a president could be, seize, and his military, his security, his friends around the world, the Chinese, the Russian satellites do not see the reconnaissance planes hovering over Venezuela for months in preparation for this. How nobody saw this coming, beats me to start with. So, but she has clearly indicated that they are ready to work with the United States. And when you think about it properly, the Minister of Interior, the Minister of Defense, and I think two other people were among, in the hierarchy. I think, personally, they sacrifice the president for their own security and for their own safety, if you come to think about it. Because I'm still asking myself, how did all these things happen? They did not know when the CIA agents were coming into the country. They had no idea that the operatives were on the ground. They had no idea that this was going to happen. And then it happened, and everybody is like, whoa, how? No, come on. It's impossible. In other words, some of the people, and I think the CNN is reporting this, that they had some inside sources that were working with the American group.
It reminds me of the Panama president.
Precisely.
Noriega. It was almost the same thing.
The same thing.
He was working with the CIA as well,
yes,
until things got sour.
And
then the US government resulted in abducting him as well. But then, does it mean that the Maduro government was holding certain people in government ransom? Because if you're saying there's complicity of members in the Maduro government with the US authorities to be able to carry out this act, then it means that, members of his own government, Maduro's government, didn't want him to be president, but they were just paying lip service to him.
No. I think it's also a lesson, not just for, for every dictator and for presidents around the world, particularly in developing countries or third world countries. Because if you listen to the, was it the general who led the operations, or the, not the defense secretary, but there was a general who held a press conference yesterday and gave the details of the operation. Look, the planning has been going on for months.
Yeah.
150 aircrafts and the rest were, were utilized for this operation. CIA agents have been on the ground for months. They've been in the country working with some people in government. And I refuse to believe that people close to the Minister of Interior, people close to the Minister of Defense did not know that this was going to occur. And there was no any effort. But, it shows you how complacent, leaders can be at times. And they are, how do you call it, they are supporters. They are minders. Everybody becomes so complacent and they are making noise. They are addressing the press, saying that they are ready to fight. When as a matter of fact, there's another group in the country working with agents, working with the enemy to take this guy out. The behavior of the leadership, and you could see that Trump actually is not too keen on immediate regime change. It's like they are satisfied. They just wanted this man out. They've gotten him. And for them, probably that's what they want to do for now until, if these guys do not play ball, they probably know one or two that they can also take out. But look, I'm suspicious of the fact that some people within that government worked with the Americans to take out Maduro. So they sacrificed him for their own protection and security.
I fail to agree that, this is all that the U.S. President Donald Trump wants. Venezuela has the largest deposit of oil in the world, also has the largest deposit of gold. So there must be more that the U.S.
What's that gold? What's that mineral they are looking? Rare minerals also,
minerals,
yes.
Yeah. So I suspect that this is what the U.S. president is going for. But to your point about the servicemen who were already on the ground, they had been studying him for more than a month. And according to that general who gave the address at the press conference, they would have had this attack that have struck Venezuela at least a month ago or 5 days before, and they were just waiting for President Trump's go-ahead. Let's talk about, what the implication of this is, for a country like the United States. President Trump says he's going to, the U.S. will run Venezuela. He hasn't explained exactly what that is. So right now, there is an interim president, but it kind of seems like Venezuela is in limbo. How do Venezuelans living in the U.S., how are they interpreting this? How do they feel about what has happened? And I see that they praise Trump for what he's done, but on the ground, I'm not sure that people are so happy that things have changed.
So, Amarachi, pretty much the average Venezuelan wanted Maduro to go. He's a bad guy. That's not a debate. But here's the deal. You made mention earlier about this point on petroleum, and the ambassador also mentioned it. Well, guess who is the petroleum minister in Venezuela? Delcy Rodriguez,
the current vice president.
So if you're America, and as we've heard from the president yesterday, the whole point of this was to secure the oil, which might sound absurd, but you can understand that from a Trump perspective. So it makes absolute sense to work with the petroleum minister, Delcy Rodriguez. Remember, both Rodriguez and Maduro came in through this illegitimate election in 2024. And if your argument is that you are getting rid of an authoritarian regime, you might as well get rid of the president and the vice president. But the fact that the vice president is being left behind to rule for now, it points to the whole point about America's interest in the oil. Now, regarding the reaction of Venezuelans, see, I think Trump is really shooting himself in the leg. Because if your actual agenda is about the oil, then you shouldn't be making that too obvious. For you to make that statement in the press conference yesterday, it throws this so-called arrest into a different nomenclature. Now, there'll be questions about how America will act to protect the oil, because we know America was there before the nationalization of the oil by Hugo Chavez and later by Maduro. Now Trump is saying that American companies will go back to Venezuela. Well, we know that cartels and the supporters of Maduro and Chavez are still very much in operation in Venezuela. The question will be, how do you manage that? That might require further American boots on the ground. I don't know if Congress is going to approve that, but that will move the so-called arrest operation into a different ball game. So that is one. That's one. The second thing is about the legitimacy of this government. Remember, the election in 2024 is a shamble. This government is not a legitimate government. And the clamor inside Venezuela is for Maria Machado to come and take charge. But we saw President Trump yesterday pretty much say something to the effect that he doesn't think Machado has the respect
Yeah, he
that
did
she
say
needs
that.
in Venezuela, which is an absurd statement. Machado is a well-respected individual, not only in Venezuela, but across the world. So if you look at the case of Libya, look at the case of Iraq, where we've had American intervention and later political instability, and you come back to Venezuela, you might be convinced that Venezuela is much more homogeneous in terms of ethnicity, it's much more a stable democracy before Chavez. But all that wouldn't be too important when it comes to political stability and legitimacy, which is a question I think this administration has not addressed, which I think General Raisin King did not address in his comments yesterday, and sadly not from Trump or Big Exec.
And there's nothing he can say to the Russian president now, even though he's having peace talks with the Ukrainian president. There's nothing that the US president can say to Russia to convince them otherwise.
I'm not too sure that the U.S. president has been that serious with regards to Ukraine. First of all, I've always maintained that the way they went into the negotiation was not designed to achieve peace to start with. America has never been an honest broker when it comes to the issue of Ukraine. He has always supported the Russian side. And look, let's remember that Trump loves and has always loved dictators, and himself has also wanted to project that image of a dictator. Look at what he's been doing since he came to, to office. And as Ibrahim rightly pointed out, look, he's just set a new precedent that won't be surprised if other nations, other powerful nations, decide to go the same route. And I think this is the most unfortunate thing, that is same or ironic or tragic, whichever one we want to use, that a country that helped build the international system a couple of decades ago and that had ensured peace for over 70 or 80 years is now breaking all the rules and endangering the international system that it helped to create over, some decades ago. And I think that should worry us. And the rest of the world should begin to think about how do you address this American behavior? Because this is not the first time, believe it or not, it's not going to be the last effort. I heard a couple of US analysts saying that, look, who knows where next? Maybe it could be Cuba. And when you come to think of some of the people surrounding the president, like the Secretary of State, who's been very, he's from originally from Cuba himself. Yes. He hates the Cuban regime, whether they make any slight changes or not. And don't be surprised if he also begins to, push Trump that they should repeat the same thing in Cuba. So we should be worried. But unfortunately, as it is today, nobody can curtail the action or the behavior of Donald Trump. I would say the behavior of America, because a number of people in the United States, even in the Congress and the streets, I think Ibrahim can confirm this. There are a lot of demonstrations going on in America against the invasion or the behavior. The military attack on Ukraine. Okay. On Venezuela. So it's something that we really have to find a way to address. But as it is today, I'm not too sure that anybody can address the issue. Not the United Nations. Even if the Security Council meets tomorrow, America will veto it. The South American countries, all the statements they have made is just to fulfill our righteousness. They are completely helpless. Almost everybody is helpless in this situation.
Even Nigeria, because that's naturally where we will set our sights on. It was just a few weeks ago that President Trump, just before Christmas, or should we say Christmas morning, uh,
Christmas morning.
yeah, ordered those strikes on terrorist enclaves in Sokoto State. And, we're still arguing about it, how many people were killed, what places were damaged, and all of that. Uh, there is no holding President Trump back from ordering more strikes on
The
Nigeria,
interesting thing
or even a
about
similar thing
the
happening
interesting thing
here.
about you mentioned Nigeria, which is again tragic. When I hear some people, comment on this, as we speak, Amarachi, a number of Nigerians are asking Trump to come back, and they're actually dictating to him where he should go and strike. They are not asking the Nigerian government to do more. They are asking the United States government under the leadership of President Trump to do more. And that's, for me, it's unfortunate. But it shows you the times in which we are living in. And I think it's a lesson for governments, particularly for dictators. If you fail to take care of your people, if you if you think that you are safe and you can do whatever you like in your country, be aware that some other actors could change the game, as we have seen in Venezuela. If Maduro had the insight, or I don't know how many pastors and prophets you have in Venezuela, maybe if they've told him that, listen, this is a time for you to leave after the election, accept the results and leave, because the future is ominous for you, maybe he would have listened. He would not be in jail today. But the failure to, this is a problem with those who want to stay in power, those who love power. And the consequences of his refusal to allow free, fair, and credible election, or to accept the last election result, has landed him not just in jail in his own country, but in another country completely. I don't know which is more tragic, being in jail in your country or being taken at night as a sitting president and being flown and put in another country's jail.
Yeah. Ibrahim, let's get the last word from you. First of all, the focus on Nigeria, and then your final thoughts on this.
So Amarachi rightly said by the ambassador, but I think as absurd as the thought of Trump doing anything more in Nigeria, as absurd that might sound, we need to take it very seriously, and that is why. Before the U.S. went into Caracas to pick up Maduro and his wife, last year, we saw the president declare Tren de Aragua, this notorious gang, and the cartels in Venezuela, declare them terrorist organizations. Now, that gave him the impetus to then consider Maduro, who has been proven by the Manhattan court to be an accomplice of these gangs and cartel, to prove Maduro to be an accomplice of terrorism. Then it became much more easier for him to go into Caracas, as we saw yesterday. Now, coming back to Nigeria, we've seen over the years that several people, we don't have to mention names, have been declared as accomplices of not only banditry, but also Boko Haram. These people are in Abuja too. If the Americans consider Boko Haram a terrorist organization and bandits killing Christians are as terrorist organizations, that could be another impetus for the U.S. to act in the same way we saw it act in Caracas yesterday. So that's one. The second thing I'll caution the federal government of Nigeria on will be on its relations with China and Russia. Nigeria has tremendous relations with both countries. But what happened before Maduro was picked up was that we saw in the last couple of months this new attitude towards welcoming China and Russia into Venezuela. The government in Nigeria and Abuja has to be really careful in how it's moved forward with its relations with those two countries. So we know that Trump is a deal maker. He's interested in Venezuela because of the oil, obviously. The oil also has something to play in Nigeria. You have to be very smart enough to understand that this man is a deal maker, and to make a deal with him will actually save you and your government from having the same embarrassment we saw in Caracas yesterday.
Yeah, not just oil, but
let me just add also, I don't know whether Ibrahim will agree to this, I also think that coming at this time, it's also a very nice way of distracting the American public away from the Epstein files.
True.
So these are all the things that we must also put into our discussion.
Yeah, Ibrahim, you agree as well, right? It's what American presidents do. when they have domestic problems.
No,
They tend to solve international problems.
all presidents do
Well,
that.
all
When there is
presidents, yeah.
too much wahala at home.
Well, I say the
they
U.S.
find-
because, you know, they're the
they find a way.
biggest and, you know, most democratic country
And by
in
the
the
way,
world, they claim.
sorry, because of what Ibrahim said, look, we're in a dilemma here because we have no choice but to work with everybody, the Russians and you know, the only thing that I find, you know, a little bit worrisome is that the Russians are not going to do anything for you in times like this,
Right.
and the Chinese are not going to do
No, they
anything
won't.
for you in times like this,
No, they
which
won't.
makes Ibrahim's, you know, advice a very wise advice at this point in time, because they are not going to move or take any action, you know. They are going to mind their business and just keep quiet and continue with their transactions.
And in the church, we'll say, Selah. Word is enough for the wise. Thank you so much, Ambassador Keshi, for being here to take on this topic. Ibrahim, I appreciate your thoughts all the way from California. Thank you for joining us on Diplomatic Channel.
A pleasure.
That's Diplomatic Channel today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.